every now and then when I'm leading a group and we have a small number, in fact, like last semester, one time we only had like 4 guys, and it's like, okay, so there's only 4 of us, so if y'all don't talk a lot, this is going to get real awkward real quick. So I kind of feel that way with Matt on today.
That may be this. Yes, we don't have,
usually Matt does the
we don't
bulk.
have an outline.
Right. So if we don't talk, this is going to get real awkward real quick.
I think that's fair. So this is the next episode. I have no idea when this is coming out of the Sunday Extra podcast.
Yeah.
However, for those of you who are watching this instead of just listening to it, you will see that there is someone not here, and that is our lead pastor, Matt Sturdivant.
In fact, his microphone is even gone.
Yes, yes. In honor of his absence, we also absenced his absenced. We got rid of
communication.
There you go. His microphone. So at the time of this recording, Pastor Matt is trying desperately to get back to Texas from North Carolina. He has been over there over this week. Something that, as a church that we highly value is coaching and mentorship and having somebody else with eyeballs on you to be able to help encourage you and move you forward. And so that's what he is doing. He's with a group of pastors, a network of pastors that get together periodically in a variety of places around the United States to encourage one another and just kind of check in, get some strategies for how to do church life. So he's been in North Carolina this past week, and then this has probably come out a week later than this happened, but we had a lot of rain yesterday on Wednesday. So I think that giant storm sat between DFW and whatever airport he's flying out of. And so they delayed. And I think he's taking off sometime this afternoon to come home.
Man, because I think he had like a 4:45 a.m. departure, like for a rebook, and then that one got delayed. So
like today?
Yeah, I thought it was
like it was 4:45.
I think it was.
Man.
Maybe it was PM.
I thought it was 4:45.
Okay, cool. I thought it was AM. I was like, I'm so sorry.
Oh man.
Okay, probably was PM. Yeah.
That's 4:45 Eastern.
Yeah.
It's one thing if you have a 4:45 like flight, but it's a whole nother level if that flight gets canceled. So you've gotten up,
you're there.
Yeah, you're making your way to the airport, or you're there at the airport, and then like, oh, you didn't have to be here at 4:45 after all.
Which is good because I think Sunday we talked about failure, and so.
Good segue.
So
there you go.
That was great.
Failure is never far away from our lives. So we're going to talk a little bit about failure, particularly our failures, and hopefully for those of you
looking forward to this talk so much this week.
For those of you who are consuming this, get to enjoy our pain. But before we get into that, I thought we've been doing sort of get to know you questions. I thought a good thematic failure get to know you would be, where is a place that you have traveled to and you never want to go back there?
Oh, yes.
This was a mistake. We should not have done that.
Oh, man.
We did not. One of the differences between, say, me and Pastor Matt will come in and will have emailed us an outline of how this discussion is going to go, and I have given you guys nothing except that we're meeting for this recording.
All right, so
I know you've traveled to some pretty remote places,
yeah,
so I'm excited.
My assumption is that he will say there's no place I've been that I wouldn't want to go back.
And that's exactly where I was going to go.
Because even the bad places had a
he's
charm.
Good. He's going to find the good in it.
They had a charm about them that the misery was worth going back for.
Yeah, so I can't say...
I know mine now. Okay, keep going. I know mine now. But no, you can keep going.
Okay,
keep going.
right,
I'm ready.
Yeah, I can't think of the big trip, this country or this city I wouldn't want to go back to necessarily, but I can think of specific moments. Mm-hmm. Like Juarez, Mexico, going to the little hole in the wall taco stand where it's just like buckets of soup, and I probably wouldn't go back there. Not that I could ever find it again.
Not that I don't want to get shot.
Well, there is that. That wasn't happening at the time. But this doesn't exactly answer your question, but it does lead into failure. So when I was in Cambodia, I mean, we were stupid Americans, tried to live by like, you know, American whatever, you know, not the Cambodian culture at times. And so like on Friday night, you know, we would stay out, you know, go to a gas station, get a drink or whatever. And Cambodia is really, really at this time, it wasn't really safe after dark, and especially like late into the night, you know, 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock. And there was one evening we were out, and it was well after dark. I mean, it was probably like after 10:30, 11, maybe close to midnight, somewhere like that. And me and my roommate had this great idea. I mean, we were like maybe a half mile from our house. You know, instead of getting like a taxi, well, let's just walk it. Okay, yeah.
The moment you say you had a great idea,
yeah.
I always am wondering if it's like, well, is Jeremy gonna make it? Like,
I mean,
did you die for these Cambodia stories? I think you told one of the boatman. So I was just okay. I'm the boatman. So this was we decided to walk. So it's like I'm just gonna guess it's probably like midnight. I mean, rational person, we should take a taxi. We're like, yeah, let's just walk it. You know, it's less than a mile. And so in the middle of the night, we're walking around like side streets in Cambodia. And at one point, and a lot of the nice houses have guards, like armed guards. You know, if it's really nice, they'll have like AK-47 guards standing outside. And so we're walking, and one of these guys just decides to start following us. And so he's maybe 50 yards behind us, half a football field, but he followed us for like half a mile, and he's got an AK-47 on him, and it's midnight in Cambodia, and there's no like really like laws or anything like that.
As far as you know, you have done nothing to warrant him following you. It's not like you like through hand signs or something.
No, oh, absolutely not. Okay. Absolutely. And other than us being obvious foreigners, obvious not Cambodians who probably have a lot of money compared to him.
Okay.
So that right there, you know, makes us a target after dark. So that street at midnight is a place I would not go back to.
So what, did you just like get to your spot, yell base, and then he backed off, or?
I don't think we busted into a run at any point, because
a bad idea.
Right. I think he was close enough, like he would have seen if we had gone off into a run. I mean, but me and my partner, I mean, we're like talking like the whole time, what do we do? You know, if he takes you out, you run. If he takes me out, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, like legitimate, like what do you do in this situation? So at some point as we got real close to our home, and we knew once we got to our home, there's a gate, there's a fence, and we have our own guard who's not armed. He's just a college student that we paid a few dollars to sleep outside.
It's a thing you can ask college students to do. I love that. You sleep outside.
Yeah. We'll I mean, it's basically, you know, the same sleeping situation he would have had at his home, not to make light of it. I mean, that's... Yeah, so it's like, hey, come sleep outside of our house. You know, we have a little...
We'll pay you.
Yeah, there's a little roof over it. I mean, And
so it wasn't like you get the stray dog who follows you, and then eventually, like maybe he's even barking at you, but eventually he gives up because you've moved out of the territory. That didn't happen.
Eventually it did. So as we got closer to our house, the guy at some point did just stop and like peel back. And so I don't know if he decided he was wanting to protect us on the way home because we were so stupid, obviously, to do this. I don't know if he had bad intentions and changed his mind. I don't know if God sent angels down to like keep this guy from... I don't know. But so that's where I'm not going back to. I'm not going back to that street at midnight.
After midnight, yeah. That makes sense.
Anyway.
Well, I feel like my story compared to that is like nothing.
Yeah, but all of his Cambodia stories would fall into that category.
Okay, I think I would say if you live there in the part of this U.S., I'm so sorry. We can still be friends, but I would say Western Kansas or Eastern Colorado. So here's why. I think the specific area I'm talking about is like once you make it through the panhandle of Oklahoma.
It's like there's a panhandle.
It's like the southwest area of Kansas. Like I remember driving there, and it's just like there you don't see any people.
Oh yeah.
You don't see any trees.
No.
You don't see, and there's parts of it you don't even see crops.
Yeah,
like,
I don't think you see fields either.
It's just it feels like brown. Undeveloped like land. And I just remember like, wow, there's nothing out here. And I went to school in Kansas. I went to K-State, and so which is more on the other side of the state. And I remember
it's much
a phrase I would say is the reward of driving through western Kansas and eastern Colorado is you get to see the mountains at some point.
Eventually.
But eventually. And so, but yeah, I do have friends who live in that part of the world who are trying to help reach. So I'm glad they're there.
You do?
Yeah, we do. We have friends in Colby. It's a little bit more. It's a little bit more north, but still west.
Closer to Nebraska, yeah.
But
as far as Kansas go, it's close. It's within 2 hours, 3 hours drive.
I would call that
close.
Probably culturally wildly different between the two.
Yeah. But yeah, southwestern Kansas. I remember driving up to like Garden City just to go to a friend's wedding from college, and I was like, wow, there is nothing here.
Yeah, I remember being a Kansas native. At times, needing to drive to Colorado, and you get past the Salina area, so kind of halfway across on I-70, and it is legit. Like all the complaints that people have about Kansas, that's where it starts. Like it's flatter than a pancake. There's nothing out. You can see the curvature of the earth. You might actually get to hear grass grow, like all of that stuff. And then you cross the border into Colorado, and it's the exact same. You're promised Colorado gorgeousness and just get worse roads.
But there's no fields. I kind of like
there's no fields.
Like the fields of what and during the day it's kind of, I don't know, it's kind of relaxing. But once you get to like the no field, you're like, okay.
But then you find out like a lot of Western United States is owned by no one but the government. Like the government owns most of like all of that barren land. And then there are a lot of I say a lot. There are a handful of like nuclear silos, like missile silos that have gone like, we don't want these anymore, that people in Kansas have said, that looks like a good place to live. Like, what are the chances that some foreign entity is going to make it all the way to the middle of the United States and then look at Kansas go like, I want to settle. So they built like down into all of these old abandoned missile silos. And I think that's probably part of why there are not fields and all of that kind of stuff, because it's not my favorite part of Kansas. Yeah, that's fair.
Wow.
That's totally fair.
There you go. That would be, but again, so, not nothing.
If you've been to Lubbock, you have been to this part of the world.
Yeah, it feels similar in that realm. Mm-hmm. But what about you?
Mine.
So his is like danger at night. Yeah. Like he might die on that road.
Yeah, I think mine is going to be is very personal. I don't think this town likes me. I've been to St. Louis 3 times in my life, and 2 of them, it seemed like it was trying to burp me out the whole time. I first went with my family, at least my mom. We went there and we did the arch and all of that kind of stuff, and it was fine. The next time I went, it was Y2K. Like the reason I was there was for Y2K. My wife and I were part of a drama group at the seminary, and at the time, the Southern Baptist Convention was talking out of both sides of its mouth around the whole Y2K. And if you weren't around for this, we were trying to explain this to our kids. Like you thought, I mean, in all reality, COVID was worse as far as like just the mental game of the year 2020 was a lot worse than this, but there's probably a good multi-year run-up of if you wrote your birthday or any date, it was like maybe a single digit for a month if it was, less than October, 2 digits for a date, and then just 2 digits for a year. Like when I still write my date of birth with 2 digits for the year. And there was a concern that all of the computers at the year 2000, as soon as we flipped over, were going to think that everything was now 1900. It wasn't now 2000. So you're just going to have 00. Like the computers aren't going to know what to do. This was going to cause banks to shut down, and satellites were going to fall out of the sky. Like it was going to be just terrible. And so there are all these efforts to retrofit computer code to accept, new dates. And so, but at the same time, it's a big turning over of the odometer, and we're all going to celebrate, it's the second millennium, it's a new century, it's all these things. And
so was it the second?
Well, okay, so if we're going to be a numbers guy, this is where the numbers people come. Like, well, it's not really the new century in 2001, because whatever. But emotionally, yes, we're going to see all of the numbers change.
Tonight we're going to party like it's 1999.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes.
So, all the digits change, and so it's a big deal. Anyway, so on the youth side of the SBC, they were having this event called YouthLink. And so at various cities around the United States, the youth were going to gather in arenas and large auditoriums.
Forgot about that. Wow.
It was awesome. And they were going to link up to Israel and see like the new millennium kick in the Holy Land. And you were going to be able to, this is really, it wasn't before the internet, but it was before the internet. So you were on like AOL and Netscape at this point. It was not awesome internet. So to be able to live cast and see from St. Louis, Anaheim, or Atlanta, or Jerusalem, or whatever, is kind of a cool deal. And our drama group at the seminary was slated to be at the one in St. Louis. Well, we didn't know, but at the same time, the adult side of the SBC is thinking, this is the sign of the end. Jesus is returning. And so no parent wanted to send their kids to some other place when the world's about to end. So our event that I think was supposed to be where the Cardinals football team at the time was playing, so a giant football stadium, got downgraded several places to inside a very large room in a convention center. They were going to shoot off fireworks, but then there were low ceilings, so they couldn't do that. Like it was a very wah-wah kind of thing. And when we arrive, though we're on like all of the promotional material, we show up and say, we're these people that we don't know who you are. Like, we're these people. And so in order for us to get into the event, we've flown out. We have another group of us that's in Denver at the same event, but we're in St. Louis. We had to sign up as volunteers in order to get around in the backstage area so we could do whatever. Like, I don't know what's going on. Then they hadn't prepped for us. So for the skit we were planning to do, which was very talky, and there were, I don't know, 6 or 8 of us.
Oh, man, yeah.
They had no microphones. Like, they had handheld microphones. They had 1 or 2 lapels, but that was not going to work for the thing that we were prepping to do. And so Third Day is playing, which I would want to see Third Day play. We're not there. We're in another room passing 2 water bottles as if they are handheld microphones to practice how are we going to do this skit that we're supposed to do. And then, so that was just this miserable thing. And then we go, I think on New Year's Eve, the city is dead. It looks like it's supposed to be Chicago, but it's not. And there's this archway and it's just dead. Zombies have taken over St. Louis. No one is out. We find like a pub type Chili's place that was open, and we're watching the news to see, by this point, places are starting to have cycled over into the new century, right? A time zone that we're trying to see, like, is the Middle East in flames? How's Africa doing? And all this kind of stuff. And they're fine. Nothing is happening. Like, this is going to turn out to be a non-event, which, as we all know, it was. Then we get home and they've misspelled my name. I will let those of you who know me, you know how my name is spelled, and they substituted a vowel in my last name.
Oh no!
Yeah, on the certificate that said "Thanks for volunteering to the event that I was invited to." It was very bizarre. So that was just kind of bad. There was another deal where I traveled through St. Louis. And not only did they lose my bags at the airport, but I think they also had to bump us into a hotel over the night. Like, it was just bad travel. I have not had many good experiences in St. Louis, so you don't foresee, like, if I have to choose the feel of St. Louis, I will choose Chicago. I've had much happier times there. So there you go.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think also it helps that I'm a Royals fan, and
you're not a Cardinals fan.
We don't have a lot of love for the St. Louis
You're
teams.
a little biased going in.
I'm probably a little biased going in,
sure,
but yeah, it is what it is. But then, as a segue into failure, I think one of the things that has been true in my life is that the different failures that I've had have often been times where I've seen either my prayer life go up, or I've seen God move, or whatever. I've learned some lessons about myself. How has failure, what are some times of failure for you guys, and what have you seen the Lord do in those situations?
I think just, we didn't get an outline, but I knew it would be on this topic. So
this is the one thing I did say. We're meeting about this.
And I think just some of the, looking back on my life, some of the things that I think have stood out of like, oh man, the failures that have helped set me up to grow have been honestly the times where I have failed in relating with friends, or friends or even people who've been authorities in my life, where my actions were like, I intended this one thing, but the actual impact was this because I didn't really think through my words. And so I think there have been times where I basically went into conversations just kind of sharing just how I really felt in the moment, and not really thinking through like, how would someone perceive actually what I'm about to say? And from that's actually caused some damage in the relationships. And so I think from that, God has kind of gotten my attention over specifically the words that I say. Of, if I'm going to have a difficult conversation with someone, I really need to be praying. I can't just be like, oh, I'm just going to waltz in and just share what's on my heart if it's going to be a difficult conversation, because that could actually end up severing the relationship. And so I think from that, like, I think God has helped me see the importance of two things. One is like, really is praying, just like, God, like, I don't really know how to go about into this difficult conversation with this person. Would you please give me the words? And then I think the other thing is just actually thinking through the words I'm going to say, and sometimes even just writing it down. And that's been, that has been helpful, I think, of writing it down and actually getting someone else's feedback beforehand of like, hey, how is this going to come across? And I think God has used that in many ways. There's been conversations I've dreaded, but because I did that, I prayed, I asked people's advice, and also thought through what I was going to say. I think that's really helped. Just for me, as I've, just in the different areas I've led, that's been really helpful. But I still have a long way to go. But I think just some of the failures that I've had of damaging people, God has redeemed in that way, and some of those relationships have come back by God's grace. But it's just have taken time and taken a lot of humility. In that.
I think that's there's something you said in there that I think has also been true in my experience of, I've goofed up here. I forecast that something similar to that is coming in the future, either with that person or it's a similar circumstance, whatever that is. And the pain of the past says, I should pray ahead of time because there's a whole bunch of things I can't control. And it's kind of weird. You're like, I'm throwing my prayers into the future. Like, God, you're at all times, all at once. And so you're already in that moment. Can you be dealing with that situation while I'm weeks, months, days away? And I've seen God really bring a lot of fruit and good and peace and all the things out of the future because of situations like that. We're like, I have failed and I don't want to do that again.
Yeah. I think one of the things also is like, usually those difficult conversations that happen are sometimes because of motives that are in my heart. Like, and I think sometimes those have revealed like, because of all of us have sinned, we have the flesh still in us. We're supposed to walk in the spirit, but we still have the flesh in our lives. And so I think there's the reality that because of sin and because of the brokenness that we have in our life, our motives are not going to be pure. And I think sometimes God has used those experiences to point out, hey, this is really what's going on in your heart. Like, you have these motives that are they're just not honoring to me. And so I think in the middle of that, I think God has helped identify those through my failures. And then part of it has been also just giving me an opportunity to confess those to God, of like, God, hey, whether it's bitterness or anger, Lord, will you forgive me for harboring that in my heart in a way that comes out towards other people. And so, and in the middle of all of it, like God is gracious. And that's also helped me see, okay, I need to be gracious to other people if they do that to me, because I have that in my heart. And so if they treat me that way, I know that I have done that to other people. So I need to give grace and forgive them. And so part of it is just, I think God has, through all of that, he's shown me his grace, but I have to show grace to other people like God has shown it to me.
I feel like you had a story, and I tromped on it earlier.
Somewhere in there. But I think first I'm gonna not answer your question and back up a couple steps. And I know Matt's not here. I don't want to speak for Matt, but when I think about failure and the opposite success, I think one thing that I have to kind of back up and define is, when I look at failure, am I looking at it from my own viewpoint of what success is and what failure is, or from the world's viewpoint of what success is and what failure is, versus God's definition? And I think one place that I see that is, if going way back, if there was a relationship that I thought, this is the person I want to spend my life with, and then I feel like, oh man, I just messed it all up. I failed it. Well, it may be that in my vantage point, I'm seeing that as a colossal failure, but God actually has different plans, and so or work. I've got this job that I think this is the job I want, and man, I blew it somehow. I failed. Well, that may be more of a worldly failure, for lack of a better term. Fill in the blanks here.
Well, I will spare the name of the pastor because I don't think he's worth following, and I don't like this example, but I think it's similar. His example was, when good things happen to you, then that's how you know that you have God's favor in your life. And one of his examples was, he was driving along the highway, and we've all had this experience of, you got to get over to get off take the exit, you got to get over, and nothing's opening up. And then suddenly at the last minute, a hole opens up in the lane, and you're able to sling off into the exit, and and he's like, that's the favor of God. And the cynic in me then goes, okay, but what if the hole never opened up, and that was also the favor of God? Because had you taken the exit, you would have gotten into a fender bender, or there was some other thing that God was actually protecting you from, and that's why you couldn't get over. I would see it as a failure because I didn't take the exit.
Or there's something down the road that God needs you to be at. Yeah.
Right. Or like the family was reading through Acts, and there's this thing where Philip is going great guns in Samaria, and then God says, well, leave the thing you're doing now to go on this road. And he runs into a government official who becomes a follower of Jesus, gets baptized, and all this kind of stuff. And my daughter says, but I would and then Philip just gets yanked out, like he's just out, and he's somewhere else. My eldest daughter was like, yeah, but I would still have a hard time if I was Philip, thinking, yeah, but you put me on this road. I was supposed to end up at Joppa or Damascus, wherever the road ended up. But now God's purpose was for me to be talking to this guy. That was the whole reason I was on the road. But somehow you get it in your own head, like, oh, I'm on the road to end up at the end of the road. And that isn't what God planned at all.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess all that to say is, I think as we look at failure, we really have to define, was this God just leading a different direction? Are we confusing the worldly definition of success and failure versus, did I actually fail in some way? Which I have plenty of failures. Don't get me wrong.
I have both kinds.
And, I absolutely love this discussion we're having because, if I have 9 failures and 1 success, the other way, if I have 9 successes and 1 failure, I'm going to key in on that 1 failure, and kind of brush over or ignore the 9 successes. But yeah, I've seen again and again that God can work through our failures, and we're never failing beyond what not just God can restore, but God can actually use to teach us and work it in our lives for good. I've heard Matt and others say that God doesn't waste a hurt, and I think our own failures are a category of those hurts. Deep, self-inflicted hurts that God can use. Well,
that reminds me. I can't remember if all of us participated in this, but we did a series a little bit ago, I think, on the life of Joseph. And there was this graph that we kept using about...
Was it Detour?
Maybe?
Was it the Detour one? Yeah, I think it was Detour.
Sounds familiar. But we kept putting up this graph of his life of like, this were the highs and these were the lows and all this kind of stuff. And the more I kept looking at it, I thought, well, that, from a perspective, that graph is accurate. Like when he gets kidnapped, that's a low. When he gets hired by a wealthy guy, that's an up. When he gets in prison, that's a down, and so on. And then, but from another perspective, it was a straight line. There wasn't ups and downs. It was God is using these circumstances to position Joseph for this other thing that's down the line. So from a perspective, it looks like he has a bunch of wide swings of success and failure. But then from what God's plan was, it was actually a straight line, which I think is part of what you're getting at. Like, just because I feel like my plans were thwarted by circumstance or by God or by
my own choices,
that doesn't mean that I'm not still moving in the direction God wants me to go. I just don't know where that is yet because I'm still in the middle of the story.
Right.
And I think one thing about Joseph that God was doing was, God was forming in Joseph the character he needed to have to be the type of man to actually lead. Because he ended up going from in a jail cell to the second most powerful person in Egypt. And God really used him to actually bless the whole region in that moment. And so I think, I think what you said, Jeremy, sometimes like a worldly failure, like everything that went bad for Joseph, it really looked terrible. He also had some character issues that through the worldly failure, like God was actually was helping him be more successful in his eyes of choosing faithfulness before God, because he had some character problems that God was really aligning towards his will through some of those worldly failures.
Yeah. And this is, just pure, speculation on the story, but as Joseph's being carted off to Egypt, was he second guessing? Why did I share my dreams with my brothers? Why did I talk to him about that? Why did I,
or did I even interpret the dream correctly? Or start doubting all kinds of stuff.
All the things that he could second guess. Why did I do that? Why did I do that? Why did I do that? And we know the end of the story. It's easy for us to read three pages. See, it worked out, Joseph. It's different when it's 13 years of your life. 13 years of your prime.
So I think I thought Matt said something really great on the stage that I would like to apply, which is, what failures do you want cataloged forever on the internet, and share those instead of the failures you don't want cataloged on the internet. So in thinking of that, I think there's a recent failure, I'll say within the last year or so, that I think what it highlighted for me was surround yourself with good people, and that will also help on the other side of the failure. So, in fact, we just, the family is just coming back from a very similar kind of deal, but there's a place in Texas that there's a Baptist retreat center where somebody has built and donated a place where you can, as a Baptist pastor, your family can stay there for nothing. It's great. You could never afford it, so it's great. But it has a capacity to it that my family is too big for. And I have gone on there by myself at times to do some planning. I've even signed up for the place with my family, because without me, we're at capacity. With me, we're over. And but like for those times, like I get in there and the fam's going to have a good time, but I need to be in the office. So I might spend a night there, but then I'm not really there. And they've been there for multiple days, and it kind of all works out. There has been a time where we've been down there and I've said, okay, there's going to be 6 of us. And they say, well, if there's 6, we can't put you here. And so where we ended up staying was less awesome. Like it was some of the hotel spaces, and there wasn't a kitchen, and it was all kind of, they ran into a tarantula and like all kinds of awesome things. I'm like, So last October, we're going to go on vacation, and like one of the weeks we're going to go down to this place. So I call early and I lie and say there's only going to be 5 of us because I know we're at capacity, over capacity at 6. And we've made it work before. And the closer we get to the date, the more the Holy Spirit is just like pressing me. You've got to make this right. Because you're lying, and I'm working out all kinds of ways in my head that we can kind of sneak around and be 6 but not be known as 6 and all this stuff. I have a very faithful wife who's also, I'm like, how do I shield her from the fact that we're kind of skating on the rules and all this kind of stuff? Like it's just getting worse and worse the closer we're getting to the thing. To where I'm like, I've got to do the stand-up thing because I know God's going to call me on this lie at some point. The truth always comes out, and it's not going to go well. So I think the day we're supposed to go down, I've finally come clean with the family. This is what I've done, and I've lied and all this stuff. And a call, and it's not going to work out. Like they didn't have other spaces, and it was going to be a thing. And I think, it's one thing to lie. It's another thing to own up to the lie and ask for forgiveness and all that. It's another thing to do that in front of your kids as a pastor, and all this stuff. Like, this is terrible. But I think a key thing in all of it, because the kids were very sad. Sure. Like we've said, we're going to Disneyland, and now we're not going to Disneyland, and because you lied to me. But Glenda was great. Like what she kept, I have no idea really how disappointed she was or wasn't about the whole thing. What she kept reiterating to me was, it's much better that you were honest than that you kept going with the lie. It's much easier to follow you as a wife if my husband is honorable than if he is dishonorable. Like all of these things that you want your spouse to think of you, but you're at a low moment. Like you've been exposed as a fraud and all these kind of things, but yet she's like, this is actually better. And that was good. Like we made something else work for that week of vacation. But I think there's something that Glenda will often counsel ladies on if they're contemplating getting married, is you really have to be careful about the guy that you're getting attached to. Like there's all kinds of moments, and you don't really know who you're attaching yourself to. Like you could vet the guy, the family could love him, everything is great. You don't know what's going to happen in 20, 25 years. And you cite moments in the Bible of this person disobeyed God in a huge famous way, and he has to die, but so do his wife and kids, or the whole earth opens up and swallows up the whole family, kind of stuff. And it's like, what? I'm just the wife, what did I do? Like, how it's him, so you have to be very careful about and pray for the person that you are attaching yourself to. And I think that I'm grateful that is the character of the woman that I married, that she's able to see, well, it's better to do the right thing even though it's hard than to be upset about the thing I didn't get. Like the whole family missed out on a thing because of that. But I think that's also true of friends. Like whenever you hit a failure, who you have set up around you as friends is going to be very key to you being able to move on. If you're in the spot of, say, to pick on the prodigal son parable, he had built up friends badly I'm spending all the money and hanging out with all the party crowd, and then when his money ran out, he didn't have the support base he thought he did. That is telling. So I mean, get yourself around good friends, and I think that will help a lot. As God is growing you through the failure, there's also that support system.
Mm-hmm.
I'm now envisioning Glenda doing premarital counseling or something and opening up the story of Achan in the Old Testament.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
totally.
Yeah. Don't marry this guy because your whole family is getting swallowed up in the earth.
Well, and I think her thing is, like, as far as you knew, when they got married, Achan was a stand-up guy. But
Wow.
he hadn't been presented with the opportunity to, go against. I mean, I don't know. Who knows from Achan? You just know the one story, but yeah.
Yeah, if you're listening, you don't know who Achan is, Old Testament, look it up.
I think it's Book of Joshua. Yeah. It's right after Jericho falls.
Yep.
And so does he.
Like, yeah. It's a highlight to a low light.
Yeah. So, again, I'm not Matt, so there's not a whole lot else that I wanted to talk about other than, we looked on Sunday about having unshakable faith in the middle of failure. Matt highlighted Peter, and he colossally fails by denying Jesus, and then 3 days later, or I don't know exactly how many days later, he sees Jesus on the shore and does all the will you feed, do you love me, Peter? But then I thought it was great at the end when he says, and then he has the opportunity to deny Jesus again. Like, Nero has him captured and imprisoned, and we're going to kill you unless you deny your faith. And he says, no. I think that's also a great part of failure, is you get to sort of test drive some choices, and do you like the results of that choice? And I will,
Yeah. And actually, I'm gonna jump back. I didn't actually share a story. I got out of that. But one aspect of failure and forgiveness afterwards is also trusting God with the possible damage or hurt you've done to the other person as well. And actually, one story that came to mind for me is another story of lying.
Hey!
You talked about lying. Like, this goes back to my college days. I had a good friend, and without details, another friend, acquaintance was wanting to do something, and he had said if friend A asks about it, just basically lie. And so I just don't want. Friend A asked about it, I lied, and friend A, who I was good friends with, found out and called me on it, and basically, you straight up lied to me. It's like, yeah, I straight up lied to you. And, and he was able to forgive me, but it was hard for me, number one, to forgive myself, to accept that forgiveness, but also to trust God with that friend's heart, that, God can work in the friend's heart as well. Because I felt like now I've damaged my friend, I've damaged our friendship, and it was hard to trust God with that. And, it reminds me to John Mark in the New Testament when he abandons Paul, but then later on, there's at that time there's obviously a rift because Barnabas is like, let's take John Mark with us again. Paul's like, and but later on Paul specifically says, John Mark is a great help to me, and you see, he's the one who wrote the book of Mark in the New Testament, and so I think. Not getting stuck in that moment where, John Mark failed and he walked away and thinking God can never reconcile this between me and Paul. We're done. But trusting God with both sides when we fail, God can work in the other person as well. And so I think for me, that's a tough spot that I have to trust God, not just with me and my heart, but with the other person as well.
I think the image that keeps coming back is that of a coach and a player. I don't know of a coach who purposefully sets up his players to fail, but is able to use the failures for something greater. So whether that's we're going to win the championship and it was because you failed to an easy game or whatever the thing is, but I think on one end I fail, I didn't like the results of the failure, and if there's a level of encouragement or Holy Spirit interaction, there is an internal kick yourself in the rear moment of we're not going to do that again. Mm-hmm. And when I face the same situation, mm-hmm. the same temptation, the same opportunity to lie, whatever the thing is, I'm going to choose differently because I don't want to do that again. There's kind of an inner fire that comes out of that. But I think there's also the coaching that the Holy Spirit does, that good friends do, that leaders, mm-hmm. I see that you have failed. Now let's help identify why we failed, whether it was a motive, whether it was a skill, whether it was some other thing. And let's work on that. Let's talk about it. Let's get past that so that when we hit that again, we get a different result. I don't know that we're always going to win, but we might do better than we did before.
Yeah. That reminds me of I think the verse Hebrews 12:11, when we fail, there are often consequences, they're painful from that. And I think Hebrews 12:11 says, no discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. But later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who've been trained by it. And so I think just and that said in the context of God uses discipline basically for our holiness. And so just how, I think just in your coach player example, mm-hmm. how, the coach is able to use basically the pain and the discipline that comes from failure for good. And God is the perfect coach, and he's able to use that for a harvest of righteousness and peace. And that's that's hard to beat.
Yeah. Because he'll guide that in the perfect way. We're going to be a little ham-handed about it, but
people are not able to do it as perfect.
And do things like Jeremy, you were saying with John Mark. He'll thread the impossible needle. There's no way that I can see how this thing can be either reconciled or any good can come of it, and somehow he will move all the things around so that everyone is blessed out of it.
Yeah,
it's pretty good.
And we had a gospel written through that man. It's just amazing to see how God, you think about John Mark's failure, that was the guy God used to help, write one of the books of the Bible. That's been,
I think, and there was, Matt mentioned, I can't remember where in the message, we're all either in the middle of a failure, we have just come out of a failure, or one is approaching. And so I think what's great about that is we're always in process. Until we are dead, we are in process, but it's easy for us to take our current state as this is how it's going to be for the rest of time. And God is continuing to move in our lives, continuing to draw stuff out and using all kinds of circumstances, both good and bad, to point us back to him, to point out, no, you really still need me. And let's work on this, and let's work on this so that we can become increasingly like Jesus. All that to say, I hope you're encouraged, dear listener. Wherever you are in that failure spectrum, you're in process. Don't give up just because you're in the middle of the failure. Lean into God. He is the strong foundation. I think that's what I love about the title of the series right now, Unshakable Faith. You're not, the storms are going to come, as the parable goes. Storms are going to come, but then what is your foundation on? And that will help you. So I think this Sunday, hard transition, this Sunday is Mother's Day. This will come out after, maybe. We'll see what my day is like today. We might get this out earlier. So if we're able to get this out before Mother's Day, no, I'm sorry. I've got all my weekends messed up. This is totally coming out before Mother's Day because it's not this Sunday.
Yes.
This is Star Wars Sunday. May the 4th be with you. That's the bad joke of the day. We're doing our volunteer appreciation. Yes. That's what's actually happening this Sunday. So
may the appreciation
to all of the volunteers, thank you so much for all that you do. To all the moms on Mother's Day, thank you for all you've done and continue to do. And we will be back here hopefully we'll see. Maybe Pastor Matt will make it back from North Carolina before the next Sunday Extra podcast. But until then, hope you have a great week, and we'll see you back here next time.